we'll have to see how the players will fare with this one. I believe again the spawns are the polar spawns, north and south.
I see. Practicing is very unfair, I have to say. I find that people
It's taking the initiative.
Yeah, it's unfair because I don't practice, and then if I get against someone who has practice, I lose. It's not fair. There's logic in this somewhere. I have to say, I'm also getting quite upset at Moobot in the Twitch chat. He's being very mean to people. He was mean to me earlier. I typed something in the chat because I saw that
he removed my message earlier.
Likewise.
Yeah.
I saw Martinus has joined us for this stream. So hi Martinus, if you're still watching. I did try to say hello to you in the Twitch chat, but Moobot deemed it unfit for me to do so. So I will say it on the stream instead. I can use as many captions as I like.
You're probably too excited with your hellos, and he sat you down. As a, you can't be too excited in our Twitch chat. No.
Hashtag no fun allowed.
Of course. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's been one of those nights, isn't it, Marshall? I haven't even been drinking yet.
No, I've got a glass and a half of H2O sat next to me here. So, anyway, the players are spawning in. Hello, folks, and welcome to Exodus Esports Team Duel 2v2 tournament with a $150 prize pool. This is round 2, and in the teams this time we have Qzipco and AdmiralGeneral in blue, spawning on the North Pole, going double bots with a heavy eco start, following up with some air there, ×2, so they obviously want to get heavy into the air game. Meanwhile, on the South Pole, however, in the white team, we see Mott 9001 and Protz representing Team Spaghetti Strats, going double bots, air, more bots, and then vehicles. I am joined by the Roncash.
Very good evening to you all once more. I'm seeing, again, what we're seeing with the white base, they are being quite expansive with the factory planning. You see they sort of have these sort of snake of factories heading off to one side, and to me, that is almost a psychological indicator. They're quite happy to expand. They're happy to claim that territory around their base. Whereas if you look at the blue team, they've got a sort of cluster thing going on. They're sort of keeping themselves to themselves, largely staying within that little group of 4 mountains within which they find themselves. I'm going to go ahead and put an estimate out here that the white team is going to be the more expansive team here. But I'm happy to be proved wrong.
I think you may be proved wrong. I mean, well, I think typically in PA, expansion is something you definitely want to do from, you know, an immediate sort of point in the game. Do see a few pings from white saying, oh, there's a few expansions going off there. They have got a Firefly Scout going around. But the reason I said I think you're being proved wrong is because if we look in the queues, we see a lot of area builds for lots of different mechs points all around the place, and we have a lot of reclaim queues as well from combat fabs to get the trees and the early extra metal there from the Treeco or tree economy.
Tree economy is hugely underused in my experience on casual and ranked games. I think a lot of people who use the early Treeco do a lot better because it's free metal. It's you know, rather than having to go out and expand and defend an area, you just send out a fabricator. Here you go, buddy. Go and suck on some trees for a little bit, and hey presto. For the life of me, I can't figure out which part of the tree is being converted into metal, but
I think all of it, but I don't know. There's some metal fabrication magic going on somewhere in their nanobot mage-like something or others. But anyway, I cannot justify my points, and it's worrying me. But looking at both of their teams now, the build queues are still unchanged from what they were earlier. We do have heavier bots from the blue team, so they will have the mobility. We even have a few more air factories, so to making 4 in total, with a 5th one ready to be built. But that's going to be a really heavy air presence there.
Oh, on the southern plateau, you see those metal extractors there. There were about a half a dozen white fabricators here on this plateau here. But what we had then was a little swarm of docks run in and chase them off. It was almost sort of Laurel and Hardy-esque type. Running away, they didn't get very far. They got absolutely obliterated, and that's going to really set them back. That was a lot of fabricators committed to that expansion, and they're all gone.
Yeah, a couple of fabricators at this point in the game. It is quite a good win. It's not necessarily such a crucial one as it would have been in a 1v1 because, of course, 2v2s you do have your commanders and your extra eco and your extra build powers from that. But still, losing fabricators does set you back in time. And that is also an issue because then you have to rebuild those fabricators, and it makes you have to go to your attention of building your factories. You're not building, selecting your factories, building your fabricators, and doing all that. We do see some air trades. The bumblebees are being picked off, though, really nicely there by the blue team.
I have to say, earlier on in the game, the later you go through the game, the less valuable each individual fabricator becomes. But in the first sort of 5 minutes or so, which we're just about coming out of, losing fabricators is absolutely lethal, and it can really, really cause you problems. And we now actually see White have returned fire on the earlier raid on their little defensive expansion. They just sent in their whole swarm of docks there to take out everything, but Blue retaliating heavily. They've got bombers coming in, bombers against docks, absolutely smashing that swarm, and then they've got some more coming through to just pick off the little remainders.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good, effective way of locking down that raiding force there. We do have counter-raiding going on from the blue, though, so we got raiding going on and counter-raiding, plus an air game simultaneously. Now, this game is proving to be quite a frantic one, with both teams being incredibly competent. We will see the air game being traded probably several times in the course of this game. However, I did say earlier we did have 5 air factories from the blue team. Looking at the white team, I count 1, 2, 3, 4 air factories currently. Having a look in the queues, we see no additional ones, so blue will have an air advantage simply because of buildability alone, counting out micro.
Well, usually at this point I'd be looking around to see what anti-air facilities, but actually not seeing a lot of anti-air at all, ground-based AA that is, from either white or from blue. They're relying primarily on the fighters to deal with their opponent's air, which, as you say, if you're at a disadvantage in terms of sheer numbers, you are going to have some problems. Now, what's really interesting to me about this game is that this is happening over multiple fronts. And when I say multiple, there are 4 or 5 different fronts opening up across the map. Particularly, I mean, this has been the heaviest one here, the one between these 2 little plateaus.
Yes.
But there's been plenty going on towards the rear. And actually, white now expanding here, and they're also taking control of this one as well. And they're trying to make sure they've got a little bit of control of what would be considered the rear of the planet. But there are enough lanes here that this is almost very MOBA type gameplay. Yeah,
it's a really interesting planet, and I think it could prove quite fun, and it's actually got a lot of strategy with the way the terrain is featured, and you've got a lot of sort of enclave expansions and high ground expansions. But of course, high ground expansions are not immune to low ground attack or air assault, and we do actually see a few Galata popping up here and there at the expansions of Galata, of course, being your static AA for the basic tier fabricators.
Oh no!
And the bombers, yeah.
The docks and the bombers. It's just, I've got a spare ping. I just have to pop that there because I've had it on my mouse. Oh, that's just absolutely disgusting. That tore through them, and that expansion has been denied. And that's the thing. Looking in terms of ground control, white has got a lot of terrain under their command. However, because this is such a fluid game, because air is so favoured on this map, and you can well see why, given the way that the terrain divides up into sections, the air can sort of flow between all of the sections without any problems whatsoever. That really means that having ground control is not always the most important thing, because they can just sweep through, drop a few bombs on you, and if you haven't got enough AA, your expansion's gone. You can't hold that ground very easily at all.
And quite crucially, of course, if you do know that you're winning the air game, you can transition into a few more bumblebees into your ratio and then use those bombers directly against the expansions rather than necessarily the armies. Another air confrontation, though, over the volcano there. Looks like the white team did come out favourably in that one, although there are also follow-up forces in the blue base there. We do have a few more forces going up to the northern plateau there. They are going to be intercepted by other ground units. Can some get through and take out the 2 fabricators that are sitting there? I do see the mines there. Was that you pinging those, or was that the white team?
I pinged you those mines. I pinged you those mines. That's going to be interesting. Now, the only unit that can see the mines is the scout vehicle, which
and other combat fabricators.
Oh, and other combat fabricators. I stand corrected. No, largely speaking, I'm not seeing either team sending combat fabricators out aggressively, so that's not going to be an issue. And I also can't see any scout vehicles. I see one, actually. I lied. The white team have got 1 or 2 mixed in with their armies. But without a scout vehicle there, of course, all of the units just plough blindly into them and pop like popcorn, and it's great to watch. I hope that we do get to see some of that later on. I think, actually, one good place to put those mines would be here, at the entrance to that plateau, to stop them from raiding, or at least punishing them if they do.
Yeah, that would be a really good place. And of course, mines. The thing with mines and combat fabricators, typically if you see a combat fabricator, you want to make sure you get, skitters are so cheap, just pop in a skitter with your composition. And here we do see a follow-up force of docks going through, and I think they're going to get there before any additional mines are going to be sorted out. The air game from blue should be sufficient enough to mop it up with bombers, though, should they decide to go for it. But we do have the offensive on the back side of the planet there. It has got a spinner in it, though, which should take out the bombers and scare them away. Indeed, it does.
That's
bomber
quite
left.
nasty.
Yeah.
This is quite nasty. White have got attacks going in on 3 fronts here. And really, blue are on the back foot. White are being very aggressive, and they are keeping the control of the game and forcing the blue team to react to their actions. That's very important. Holding the initiative, being the one to pull out those first plays and making your opponent react to them is a very, very strong part of map control. And I think that White have done that fantastically. Psychologically, the blue team are thinking, oh dear, I need to defend. And that is never a good mindset to be in a game which is all about aggressive expansion.
Yes, indeed. Although there aren't, I do think we did see a few docks pop into those mines there. We do see them exploded on the ground, so we can only assume that they did their dirty work there and paid their dividends. But an additional fabricator gets taken out attempting to expand. We did see the other 2 that were on that plateau get taken out as well, which really wasn't nice for blue to experience there, and they're just constantly having to replace their fabricators. They do still have some places of map control around with the odd fabricator, but 1 or 2 fabricators here and there are not a big danger. And yes, levelers, I just saw that. T2 snuck up from the blue team.
From?
I think that was rushed up by commanders or some fabricators or something. But anyway, yes, levelers are going to be a force to be reckoned with. And do White see it? I think White knows it's there now.
What are we forgetting? In this game, it's a very heavy air game. All that's going to happen is some bombers going to come over. They need some AA defense near those levelers, or they're going to disappear very quickly. Now, interestingly, I've just quickly glanced at the army tab, and I've seen the fab account. As you mentioned, blue losing fabricators very, very fast. They are massively behind in terms of numbers of fabricators on the field compared to White. Again, in terms of expansion, that is crippling for them. They need to get back on that. They need to replace those. But that does mean that they're going to have to devote build power to that, which will divert their resources from military spending. I'm just quickly checking to see whether White have got a reaction of their own. Indeed, they have.
They have got
White
the T2,
also have T2 as well. So now we've progressed into a new stage of the game here where ground forces can be a little bit more threatening individually. What I would like to see, and what I'd be very interested to see, would be an advanced air factory going up, because there are some rather nasty things you can build in those these days.
Yeah, worms are quite good if they're combined with angels, but the thing is, they do need to win back the interceptor game. The hummingbirds are just, there are so many from blue at this point, and the build capability is still there. And with the T2 economy that are going up in both bases now, additional air factories can be produced, although it looks as though the blue team's factory production has sort of dried up a little bit. They don't seem to be building anymore, and that is an issue. Although looking back in the economy tab, we can kind of see why they aren't building additional factories. Their economy is kind of in a bad place right now, as they are still trying to get up their T2 economy, although once they do get it up, they should be fine.
They just can't get it up. I have to say, though, largely the economy is still fairly similar for both teams. There's not a huge deal in this right now. The white team are just about to catch up on factories, still ahead on fabricators. Mobile unit counts, there's 80 in it, but again, that's going to be less and less of an important metric now that T2 is in the field, so numbers don't matter quite as much. Huge area competition going on right now. Let's see who can pull back this interceptor game. They're going straight over a load of Galata turrets as well. Oh, that's not good.
Really impressive micro there. And the thing with these sort of interceptor collisions here, these sort of skirmishes, is the way you want to micro them is sort of effectively roll your hummingbirds around. So you don't want to just send them in and say, go fight. You want to be rolling them in so that as soon as the first one fires, it then moves to the back, so it doesn't get the focus fire of all the opposing ones. So effectively, you are taking less damage in terms of units lost, but dealing maximum in terms of
we're
units
about to
killed.
see another big confrontation happen here. There are quite a lot of levelers mixed in with the blue force. They are on the front line, which they shouldn't be. And actually the same is true of white. They've got their levelers on the front line. What you want to do is have the weaker units, particularly the docks, sort of absorbing the shots so that they can sit there and pummel from the back, because they've got that huge alpha damage and the range. and they are actually sat there tanking, which is not really their responsibility. If you wanted to do that, you would put vanguards on the front line. They are fantastic at just sort of soaking up damage, and I'm kind of disappointed not to see any vanguards in the field, to be honest, because they are a very exciting unit.
Vanguards are, but are they necessarily cost effective with this many levelers on the field, and the air game's still kind of in the question, I suppose, because they'd get focused down so fast. It's kind of like focusing down on Infernos. They just get attacked so fast, but the thing is, when you do have those vanguards, because they have the limited range, they're not dealing the damage output. All they're doing is advancing your front lines. What they are doing
is they're allowing your other more damaging units to fire out from behind them and to stay alive longer and to deal their max damage output before dying. Now, it's a bit of a stalemate here, although the blue team does have the larger force here, and they've now started to mix in combat fabricators here, and actually the combat fabricator now starting to reclaim some of those wreckages, which I absolutely love as a mechanic, but they're about to wander into harm's way if they're not too careful about that. Meantime, on the other side, white now pushing in on this front, which is why we haven't seen an advance by that blue squad just yet, because they're having to rush and defend that little expansion there. White, I was about to say white ahead in metal, but they're not. They just ticked over the 400 mark. They had just taken out a load of the blue economy there, but it's very quickly replaced. And again, with those combat fabricators sat there reclaiming all that metal, that's keeping the blue team in the game.
Now, something I did look at in the main screen there a little while ago is we do actually see white mixing in storms with their composition, and that is the best way to deal with not necessarily having air superiority or your forces being a target for bombers, because of course storms have great damage against air. They have area damage. They're effectively mobile flak. So if the blue team decided they want to bomb this force, they'd have another thing coming.
Just no. What I have noticed, the white team now has 3 advanced vehicle factories. They are going quite heavily on a more tech-heavy composition, whereas for now, I see the blue team are largely sticking to sort of the mass T1 approach with a little bit of T2 support in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, I can't actually see any more than a single Tier 2 factory at this point from the blue team.
You are correct. I see only a single T2 factory.
Let me not distract you, because we are about to have another little confrontation happening here.
There's confrontations all over the place, don't worry about it.
Cowering behind that wall for now, because they are vastly outnumbered. They don't want to get too close. There's boom bots sort of just in there with the general force, which, I don't know, if it were me, I'd just sort of rush them at those levelers and watch them explode into a fiery ball of hot regret, but that's just me.
We do see mines going up in lots of different locations, though, from the blue team. And that's the ping going off there from blue, the force that's closest to the aggressive mines that I was looking at. Mines are really good against clustered vehicles, as well as clustered early game docks.
Now, we've transitioned now, I think, in this game from a period where having the air advantage was a huge boon. Now it seems more like, speaking of which, by the way, massive air battle about to happen, and wow.
Yeah.
Wow. White team.
Yeah, they just mopped that up completely. But the air game was just traded faster than Pokemon back in the... Whenever it was.
Marshall, I thought you were going to go with something exciting there, but no, Pokemon, okay. What I was about to say was that we've now transitioned, it seems, from a period in the game where air superiority was the dominant metric. Now both teams really focusing on this slow trickle-through vehicle play. To my mind, probably not the best strategy for this map. I think that to get any sort of conclusion to this battle, we're going to need to see some decisive play. And in terms of decisive play, I would be looking at this stage of the game, we're nearly 20 minutes in, I'll be looking for nukes, I'll be looking for some Titans even, because what you need to break this sort of stalemate that we've got going on all around the planet is one large push to take you through. This commander is exposed, I've just noticed, right next to a load of Tier 2 vehicles. I'm not sure if they've seen him yet.
Yeah, I don't think they have. They would have retasked their levelers at that point.
They can't see him. That's really sad, because he is in a lot of trouble there. Like, here they go. They're actually going to go south. This commander could be in a bit of trouble. Those levelers
They're just about to see him. They've spotted him. Oh, I don't think they've realised.
They must have seen that. They must have seen that. They weren't paying attention at the right time. They could have taken out a load of commander health. Those levelers are absolutely horrible to commanders. They just don't like them at all.
They don't like them. They don't give them a fair break, really, do they?
To be fair, the commander was sort of asking for it, really. By just
he was
robot.
flipping the levelers off and doing all that rude stuff. But looking at the white base now, I was looking at it a second ago. I didn't ping it because you were busy talking about stuff which was important. But T2 bots, as well as T2 vehicles, what could they be doing with these bots? They could be getting sniper bots to forward their lines.
I think sniper bots would be fantastic in this.
They could be getting locusts.
Locusts, yes, I was about to say locusts.
And if locusts manage to find a hole and get into the economy of the blue base,
that'd be tasty.
That would be very, very tasty indeed. But there isn't a force from the blue team now, encroaching on a plateau there. It was pinged by the white team saying, oh, we should probably do something about this. The air is mobilised.
There's not a lot of AA in there. Those are going to get absolutely sloshed.
That was... Oh dear, hello.
Wow. That's quite upsetting.
A commander just got popped.
I beg your pardon?
A commander just got popped. I think we saw a boombot snipe, or rather missed one. Let's have a look. Yes, we did.
The chrono cam.
There was a boombot snipe.
Where's my there it is, chrono cam.
20 minutes and 40 seconds in the chrono cam.
I'm there. Oh wow.
In come the boombots around the back. And
that's what I was saying. The way to win this game is going to be with those decisive plays. So actually, you did say earlier, oh, they haven't seen that commander. They did see him, but they chose to pretend that they hadn't. They fooled us, they fooled the blue team, and what they did was they secretly found a little army of boombots they've been stashing away in their base and thought, let's go and take full advantage of this, and they just did. And that is a huge setback for the blue team. They are now in prime snipe territory for Commander number 2. Where is he located?
In the middle of the base,
that
towards the front of the base. Well, he's not in the middle, he's over here.
He's still there with not a lot of defences around him. And again, I did say we were going to be seeing decisive plays, and that was what was going to break the stalemate. And we've seen it happen once, and I think Blue Team really ought to be pulling him back a little bit because they are well open for another round of the same. All it would take on this part is for White to send a scout plane around, find the commander, build some more boombots, or even some locusts, and just charge the commander.
I don't think Blue are out of the game yet, though. Having a look in the army tab, the army counts are pretty even, although a substantial number are boombots now from the blue team going against the levelers. Those will be actually quite lethal, and the factory counts are pretty even as well, and actually favouring the blue team there.
Don't forget, Marshy, what I said earlier, which is that the white team is focusing much more on a tech-centric gameplay where they've got lots of tier 2. So actually they've got fewer units, but the units that they do have are all tier 2. Those boombots are doing work. However, I'm not sure that they were really that cost effective in terms of what they achieved there, because there were enough short range units there to take out the boombots before they got too close to really take out those high value targets. And I do think, looking at the ecos as well, the white team are ahead. They've got a lot more tier 2 units mixed into the army compositions. So whilst they're not massively ahead in numbers, they've got, I think, a lot more firepower on the field, which is really going to be quite noticeable as we go into the next few confrontations.
Looking at the army positions, though, I feel as though if Blue make a massive push with this force, they may be able to break through, because White's forces are here, there and everywhere. And if Blue consolidate a single attack, including boombots, then...
This is going to depend on how much AA is in that force, which is none, and there are bombers which can react to that very, very quickly. Although they've just lost a load of those in a little air fight down here. The interceptors just trading constantly. I think they've actually lost all their bombers, so that has just taken what I was about to say out of the equation altogether. And this blue force, quite potent, really. But boombots there got picked off. They're now being caught between multiple armies, all streaming towards them. There are bombers there, and there's absolutely no AA in that mix. And that is
I think they missed their window. They missed their window, and not having AA. Oh, the bombers did drop their payload. They did get taken down by a spinner there, though. But damn, it's such a shame, because I think Blue made the mistake of not having a valid reactionary strategy. Let's actually have a look at what they've scouted of the white space. Do they see how many T2 factories white have gone? No, they do not. They only see a single bot and a single vehicle T2 factory. They do not see the additional 2.
See, that's absolutely critical. PA is a game about being able to know what your opponent is doing, and you have to have that intel. If you don't know what your opponent is doing, you cannot build the appropriate counter. You cannot put them into the corner, because you don't know which corner to put them in. And I think that's probably going to cost Blue the game, not having that intel. They're not seeing They're probably sat there thinking, how are they building so many tier 2 units? But the answer's right there under their nose. They just haven't gone and looked for it.
Yeah. I mean, they've been too busy trying to trade the air and busy trying to raid, and I think they don't want to send their air as it stands over the base because they'll then lose a bunch of interceptors there, and down goes the T2 vehicle factory, one remaining
Commander's
now.
exposed.
Oh,
I think he will be fine on this particular occasion, but
possibly.
again,
It depends on whether the leveler focuses him down or not, because he's got to get out of there. There is still the leveler there, and they are dealing with the defensive forces.
There we go. Now he's gonna. Oh goodness me! And this is what I was telling you earlier about having all that alpha damage up front. You need to have forces on the front line. Streaming them out like that is no good. And actually, that's not even Team Spaghetti Strats is guilty of that this time around.
Yeah. Oh my
Okay, the commander
goodness.
got out of there safely, but really that was very risky play.
Well,
and
he's not
quite
safe
fortunate.
until the white team is dead, so...
Well, yes, that's quite right. Very astute, actually. That's almost philosophical.
Captain Obvious strikes back, would you not agree?
Well, I prefer Captain Conundrum, personally.
Is it a conundrum?
It's a bit of a conundrum, really, yeah. So we now have another force, again, enough T2 in here to really pose a problem. I can't see any valid reaction force here. They've got an Inferno there dealing with those boom bots before they get in range. And actually, again, Blue just charging in against those Infernos when really they should be holding back a little bit and not getting too close to those fiery flame tongues of death.
Yeah. I mean, the other issue for Blue right now, if you look in the army tab, the unit counts 500 fewer units for the Blue team.
I think we are going to slowly watch as on all fronts the white team now taking full advantage of the early advantage that they gained. And what is this? Marshal?
That's a unit cannon.
This? Why is there a unit cannon being built?
Because they want to cannon units.
Oh god. That's going to be slammers directly onto that commander's head. You realise that, don't you?
Yes, I do indeed.
I'm just trying to see what tool it's going to be that they're going to use to finally dislodge that commander from the last of his presence on this planet, in this life even.
I think the main thing with slammers, though, I think they're actually quite good against the levelers because of their DPS over time. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but I feel as though levelers are good for packing punches to high health targets, whereas slammers are good for dealing with units that don't necessarily have the highest rate of fire.
They're what I would call slammers, what I would call a riot unit, in that they are good at dealing with lots and lots and lots of smaller targets, whereas levelers, as you correctly say, they pack.
They're your bruisers. They're your bruisers.
Yeah, they are quite nasty. Particularly to commanders.
And there's
they have
the
actually
GG.
called the GG. Where's that commander? Let's watch him explode in a glorious fashion. It's either going to be by the tools of his enemies or by his own delete key. In fact, it could be either at this point, and there would probably only be about 10 seconds difference in it.
Yeah, there's not a lot that the blue team can really do here. GG's well played, saying from Admiral he's conceded a long tide with his partner. I think at this point we're going to see his commander run head first into a bunch of angry levelers.
Death with honour, at least. Let me see there. Oh, he's been pushed by a boombot straight towards him. That boombot's just like, here you go. Go on. You're not wanted here anymore.
Hashtag insubordinate boombot.
that was a bit of a cheeky boombot there. He was just like, hey, you're doomed. Here you go. If only there'd been a vanguard there, just to sort of shove the commander into a vanguard, that would have been quite spectacular. But no one likes vanguards, it's just me. That was actually, again, very similar to the last game we watched. That was a war of attrition where it takes that one bit of initiative, and we saw it with the boom bots, and that was it. Those boom bots there, they took out the commander instantly. You saw the transformation in the way that the blue team played. Rather than being aggressive, trying to push expansion, they thought, oh god, we've got weak spots. We need to turtle up, and they just slowly withdrew, and white continued pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think in the end, they just were able to get rid of. In particular, I think the tier 2 unit composition really helped them just to push that last little bit. And eventually, you just saw the entire base collapse towards the center. One commander stood in the middle of it, and a big badass boom to finish off.